The drums beat like hearts ready for love. The village danced. Laughter rose like smoke. But his eyes? His eyes were elsewhere. They followed someone not dressed as a bride. The woman beside him smiled, careful and wide. Her wrapper was bright, her beads fresh, her steps quiet. But her hands trembled. The whispers came early, slipping between the claps. "Did you see?" one said. He looked past her. Another replied. "A man's eyes betray before his feet do." Inside their new hut, the fire cracked. She asked softly why he kept staring. He snapped, "You see ghosts where there are none." Her voice broke once. "But I saw you." He stood, sharp like a knife, cutting through her hopes. "You call yourself a wife and doubt me?" She reached for his arm. He pulled away. Outside, the night grew louder than the drums. Then came silence. He walked, not around the fire, not toward the well. He walked to the house of the other. Heads turned, mouths stayed shut. The bride stood alone, her feet bare, her hands empty. The beads around her neck suddenly felt like chains. No one came near. No one offered cloth or comfort. A child whispered, "Why is she alone?" The mother pulled her back, eyes cast low. In the shadows, a bent elder leaned on a carved staff. His voice was dry but sharp. "When a man throws away honor," he said, "he finds shame waiting with both arms open." But no one answered, and the drums, once full of joy, faded like a lie that no longer needed to be told. The wedding was over, but the talk had just begun. The village moved fast when there was shame to carry. "They say she couldn't even hold him through the first moon," someone muttered. Another added, "A real wife keeps her husband's feet at her fire." Heads nodded, lips curled. The elders gathered under the tree and spoke like thunder wrapped in calm. "She has no charm," one said. "The spirits do not favor her," said another. "She walked through the market like smoke. Not seen, only smelled." A mother tugged her child aside when she passed. A seller turned his calabash the other way. At the compound, her own mother spoke without looking. "Keep your head down. If you cannot hold a man, at least hold your silence." The words cut more than any blade. Even the goats seemed to ignore her now. The young ones laughed in corners. "She has no oil," they said. "Not even the smallest potion." She tried to speak, but no one waited for her mouth. She tried to smile, but the air was full of eyes that did not see her. Her friends stopped coming. Her sisters no longer knocked. Her name grew lighter, barely held by the wind. So she sat. She stared. She said nothing. They called her weak. They called her empty. But none of them saw her hands pressed against her chest at night. None of them saw the way she bit her lip to hold back words that would burn the village down. None of them noticed how quiet she had become. And none of them wondered why the silent ones always lasted the longest. She sat in silence, the kind that speaks louder than drums. Her hand moved slowly to her shoulder. The cloth slipped. There it was, a lioness, not scratched, not drawn, a mark, carved by birth and blood. Its eyes faced forward, mouth slightly open, teeth sharp. She stared at it, as if it might roar. The old words returned like wind through dry leaves. "That mark is not for show," the voice had warned. "It is power disguised as shame. Show it, and the world will change." Her fingers brushed the edge, trembling. Once, her grandmother had traced the mark with oil and whispered, "One day, they will kneel because of this." But the others had only whispered fear. "Cover it," they said. "It brings danger. It brings pride. It brings questions you cannot answer." So she had hidden it. Now alone, she let it breathe. She leaned over still water. Her face shimmered, but the water saw deeper. The lioness glowed, just faintly. The wind shifted. The sky dimmed, though no cloud passed. She pulled her cloth up fast, heart pounding like festival drums. Her breath stilled. No footsteps, no voice, only the echo of her own heartbeat. Still, something inside had shifted. She no longer felt empty, not brave, not safe, but full, as if the silence had fed her, not broken her. She stood up taller than before. The lioness did not roar, but something else did. Inside her, the sun had barely stretched its arms when the footsteps came, slow, steady, and strange. The woman wore dust like a crown and wisdom like a shadow. She asked only for water, but her eyes searched for something deeper. She drank with quiet grace, then looked long at the girl standing nearby. "You carry something you do not understand," she said, voice soft as ashes. The girl flinched. Her hand moved to her shoulder. The woman's gaze did not move. Even a lioness knows when to wait in the grass. The girl froze. Her fingers tightened the cloth around her hidden mark. "I see it," the woman continued. "I see what they fear." The girl looked down. The woman leaned in, voice lower now. "Strength hides where least expected. Even fire pretends to sleep." She reached into her waist wrap and pulled out a small pouch. No explanation, no request, just the weight of choice. She placed it near the girl's feet, then turned, then walked, then vanished. No goodbye, no question. The girl waited. Minutes passed like days. The pouch sat still, wrapped in cloth that smelled of herbs and old smoke. She bent slowly. Fingers touched it. It was warm. The village stirred behind her, but she did not turn. The cloth stayed wrapped around her shoulder, but the pressure from within had changed. She did not speak. She did not move, but the lioness stirred beneath her skin, and for the first time, her silence felt full of power. The pouch stayed hidden, but its contents called to her. At night, when the village slept, she boiled water over low fire. The herbs curled in steam, bitter and sharp. She drank slowly, each sip like fire in the belly. The first night, nothing. The second, her hands stopped shaking. The third, she stood taller. Something old and buried had begun to rise. She moved quietly, but her steps no longer dragged. Her eyes no longer dropped. Villagers started to notice. Just a little, just enough to whisper. "She walks differently now. Her face holds something I can't name." They looked away quickly, as if the change might leap onto them. Then came the gossip. Loud, ugly. The new woman was with child. Some laughed cruelly. "Now she is truly finished." Others shook their heads. "A man always runs to the one who gives him sons." The words reached her like feathers, not stones. She didn't break. She smiled, once, then walked on. That night, she lit another fire. Brewed again. But this time, she didn't drink alone. Another woman sat nearby, holding bruises beneath her wrapper. No questions were asked. No answers were needed. She poured 2 cups. The whispers began again, but this time from the shadows. "She helps the broken. She carries something we forgot. She is not who we thought." The village watched, curious, cautious, but her fire never went out, and her silence was no longer empty. It was power, growing. Eyes had watched her in silence. Not all were cruel. One pair belonged to an elder woman whose hands carried stories older than the shrine tree. She did not speak when the others mocked. She only watched. Closely, she saw how the girl moved with quiet fire. She saw the strength hidden behind stillness. One evening, she came close, not with words, but with presence. She leaned in, whispered, "I've walked your road barefoot." The girl blinked. The elder nodded slowly. "They called me cursed, until they feared me." A long pause followed. then a breath that carried years. They shame what they don't understand. She opened her hand. Inside a stone, carved with a symbol. A shield. She closed it again, then spoke of betrayal, her own. Of a man who praised her in public, then broke her in private. Of how the village blessed him still. They wear masks in daylight, she said, but spirits know their true faces. The girl said nothing, but her back straightened. Her eyes no longer searched the ground. The elder reached into her wrapper and pulled out a small leaf, folded tightly. "Boil this only when the moon is full," she said. "And when fear comes, chant what I teach you now." Then came the words. Old, sharp, sacred. The girl repeated them softly. Then louder. The wind shifted. The elder smiled. "You're not alone." And for the first time, she wasn't. Each night, her fingers searched the soil for strength. Roots, leaves, seeds. Nothing was wasted. She ground them into silence, stirred them into meaning. Alone, she chanted words no one taught her. The earth listened. So did the wind. By day, she spoke little. By night, she moved like a shadow with fire inside. One by one, the women came, quietly, some with broken voices, others with bruised backs. None of them asked why. They simply sat near her flame. She brewed. She healed. She listened. They called her nothing, but followed her everywhere. One woman brought a child. Another brought pain hidden behind laughter. All left stronger than they arrived. No one spoke of her in the market, but her name moved through back doors and whispers. She never demanded. She never begged. But the village shifted. Women stood straighter, walked braver, spoke louder. They stopped flinching when voices rose. She watched without pride. She watched without fear. From a distance, a man watched her too, the one who left her. His eyes followed the way her feet barely touched the ground now, the way heads bowed slightly when she passed. Not from pity, but from something else, something earned. The woman beside him noticed. Her gaze sharpened. Her smile grew tighter. Jealousy bloomed like weeds in a dry season. She asked questions. He gave no answers. But the silent one never turned back. She boiled. She brewed. She built something with no walls, no name, no altar. And still, her fire never died. A cry rang out in the courtyard. Not hers. Another woman, shaking, shamed, dragged by the wrist like old cloth. The elder stood firm, face like stone, voice thick with judgment. She disobeyed. She must be corrected. The crowd looked down. Fear kept their mouths shut. Silence gathered like dust. Then one voice cut through. No! It wasn't loud, but it cracked the air. Heads turned. She stepped forward. The one they once called weak. The one who drank herbs in silence. The one who healed without being asked. The spirits do not bless cruelty. The elder's face twisted. You challenge me? She didn't blink. Justice fears no age. The village gasped. No woman had spoken to an elder like that in seasons. He raised his hand to summon punishment. She did not flinch. I accept what comes, she said. But truth walks with me. The hand stopped midair. Slowly lowered. The women in the crowd straightened. The men looked uncertain. The air shifted. By the shrine wall, a man watched, hidden behind pride. His chest tightened. His throat dried. He once left her in silence. Now her voice echoed where his had failed. He did not step forward. He did not speak. But he saw her, truly, and for the first time, others did too. Later that night, a whisper passed through the village. She stood when no one else would. She faced the elder like thunder faces dry land. She carries something more than herbs. And far away, an old drum cracked without being touched. Something had changed. And the ground knew it first. Word spread not through mouths, but through movements. Women no longer crept to her fire. They came boldly. Some brought food, others brought pain. All left lighter. She spoke little, but her silence gathered weight. Her hands healed, her eyes sharpened. Her name, once mocked, now circled like a sacred chant. She stopped hiding the mark. One morning, she walked through the market with her shoulder bare. The lioness burned gold against her skin. It blinked beneath the sun. Everything paused. A gourd slipped from a seller's hand. A child stopped mid-step. Even the goats grew quiet. She carries power, someone whispered. No, another corrected. She carries memory. The kind the ancestors protect. Drums did not beat, but hearts did. Fast, uneven, aware. The elders gathered under the talking tree. They shook their heads. This is not just a woman, one said. This is legacy unkept. She bears the mark of hidden royalty, said another. It runs in her blood. They sent word to her husband. They warned him softly, then sharply. You married a lioness and treated her like ash. But the man did not bend. She is only a woman, he spat. Marks fade. So will her noise. He turned his back. But the ground had already turned against him. Old women began blessing her name when they swept the compound. Young girls pressed seeds into the soil while whispering her chant. Boys stopped laughing when she passed. The lioness no longer slept. It walked beside her. It curled behind her voice. And when she spoke, even silence listened. The husband heard the shift. But pride is louder than wisdom. And when a man refuses to kneel to a lioness, he teaches the village what foolishness looks like. That evening, 3 owls circled his roof. None flew away. The new woman collapsed before the sun rose. No wound, no fever, just silence in her limbs and sweat on her neck. She gasped, eyes wide, body stiff. By midday, the whisper started. It's the spirits. She stole what was not hers. She touched the lioness and thought she would not bleed. The panic grew faster than fire in dry grass. The elders circled, their faces grave, their voices low. This is not illness, one said. This is wrath, the kind that walks with ancestors. Another added, a curse does not always come with thunder. Sometimes it wears silence. Drums were forbidden that night. Even the goats stopped bleeding. The husband ran, shame in his steps, sweat on his chest. He fell before the woman he once left behind. His knees kissed the ground. I was blind, but her eyes stayed hard, cold, bright. She did not speak. She turned, and that silence burned hotter than words. The villagers watched. She gave him everything, someone whispered. And he chose shadow over fire, another replied. He begged again. His voice cracked. She stood still. The mark on her shoulder gleamed. The wind shifted. Leaves dropped. A baby cried. She did not turn. She did not forgive. And he knew. The ancestors were no longer warning. They were watching. That night, a child dreamed of drums with no hands. A pot shattered with no stone. A dog refused to bark. The village knew. Judgment had stepped through the gate. And it was not finished yet. The village could no longer sleep. Sickness, silence shattered peace. The signs were clear. The elders met beneath the wisdom tree. Smoke rose. Heads bowed. The oldest one spoke. A trial must come. Not of fists. Not of fire. A trial of spirits. The people nodded. Slowly. Fearfully. Only the ancestors could settle what flesh had broken. The message was sent. She received it with steady hands. I will stand, she said. Not a word trembled. Across the compound, the husband fumed. Refused. Protested. But tradition twisted tighter than pride. And tradition had teeth. He could not run from it. The day arrived. The drums stayed silent. The village gathered in circles, their feet dusting the sacred ground. Children watched from behind trees. Elders sat wrapped in memory. This was not the first time judgment walked their soil, but it was the first time it wore her face. She stepped forward, bare feet, bare shoulders, bare truth. Her lioness mark gleamed under the rising sun. He came too, reluctant, rigid, shame on one shoulder, doubt on the other. He looked at her and saw not a wife, but a mirror. Everything he abandoned now stood taller than him. The priest laid down the stone bowl. Fire lit without touch. The spirits had arrived. She dipped her fingers in sacred clay, drew a line across her forehead. Then she began to chant. The words were old, sharp, not hers, but carried in her blood. The wind answered first. Then the fire leaned forward. Then the bowl cracked down the center. She did not flinch. He did. His mouth moved, but no sound came. A tremor took his knees. He reached for balance, but found none. The elders watched without blinking. She kept chanting. The clay on her forehead burned white. He fell. The spirits had heard, and the trial had only just begun. The fire burned without wood. The wind blew without air. The drums beat, though no hands touched them. The spirits had arrived. Smoke rose in a perfect circle. The old priest began to chant, then stopped. His voice no longer belonged to him. A deeper voice took over. It boomed from the earth, from the roots, from the bones of the land itself. The people fell silent. You cast away a daughter of fire. The voice shook leaves from trees. You turned your back on what the ancestors marked. A child began to cry. An elder dropped her staff. The air was too thick for breathing. The man trembled. The woman stood still. The voice rose again. She carries the lioness. You knew. You felt. Yet you walked away. Suddenly, the fire leapt upward. A roar followed, but not from any beast. The flames revealed her mark, bold, alive, glowing like it had been waiting for this moment. The mark of royal blood. The villagers gasped. She's chosen, someone whispered. She's one of the marked. The elders looked at one another, eyes wide, heads shaking slowly. The voice continued. She was born to guide. You dragged her to shame. Now shame will be your companion. The man dropped to his knees, his face to the dust, his hands shaking. A scar appeared on his chest, fresh red, in the shape of a broken drum. The sign of dishonor. The spirits had judged. The wind stopped. The fire dimmed. The sky returned to blue. But nothing was the same. The elders turned toward her. One by one, they knelt. Not with words, but with silence. She did not cry. She did not bow. She stood, still, tall, a lioness in full light. The village watched as truth took its place, and the one who walked away from destiny was left to walk alone. That night, 3 crows circled the village well. No one drank until morning. The spirits had spoken, but their words did not leave with the smoke. The man's name cracked in mouths. His title faded faster than morning mist. The elders gathered again, not to discuss, but to declare. He was stripped, not just of honor, but of standing, of respect, of place. He stood alone in the circle of truth, eyes down, hands shaking. The people did not look away. This time, silence was not for protection. It was for justice. The new woman, once limp and trembling, stood tall again. Her strength returned overnight, but her eyes held no warmth. She turned from him. No word, no touch, just departure. The village watched and nodded. A woman does not need to shout to make a choice. The council called for the lioness. She came without fear, without force, just presence. She stood where he once stood, but the ground felt different now. It welcomed her. The elders placed beads at her feet, symbols of honor, of wisdom, of rightful place. She did not bow. She accepted. The man knelt, dust clinging to his knees. He begged. The voice that once barked now broke like clay in water. She listened. She said nothing cruel. She reached out and forgave, not because he deserved it, but because she did. The villagers spoke no cheers, only proverbs. When pride climbs the tree, it forgets the branch was not made to hold ego. Another added, the wind that carries shame never loses its way. That night, a single drumbeat echoed under the stars. Not loud, just true. She no longer walked behind. She no longer spoke in corners. She sat beneath the tree of wisdom, and others came to listen. Young girls brought gourds and questions. Old women brought silence and tears. She gave them all the same gift, truth carved from pain. Strength is not loud, she said. It is steady. The village shifted. Men began to pause before raising hands. Boys learned that silence could mean power. The drumbeat of the village changed rhythm. She became more than a wife, more than a survivor. She became a mirror for those who forgot the face of balance. Traditions did not break, but they bent. New songs were sung around the fire, not just of warriors, but of women who held broken pieces and made medicine. The elders met again, not to punish, but to praise. They spoke of her as a proverb. When fire walks in silence, even the wind must listen. Her story joined the sacred ones. Children now heard of the woman who rose from shame and taught the village to look again. No one dared call her name with pity anymore. She stood at the river one morning, wrapped in white, head high. Women danced behind her. A ritual, new yet ancient, was born. It honored not perfection, but power after pain. Girls traced her mark with red clay on their shoulders, not to copy, but to remember. The drums beat with pride. The air held peace. No one asked where her husband had gone. Some say he lived in the hills, a man of regret. Others say the spirits had taken him where pride becomes dust. She never answered. Her silence remained sacred. But her voice, when given, was law. And long after she returned to the ancestors, her name remained. Spoken at births, chanted at fires, etched in stories told when the moon is full. The lioness did not roar to lead. She simply walked, and the world followed. The night carried no fear. Only quiet, only stars. She sat beneath the sacred tree, where the roots ran deeper than memory. Around her, young voices settled, feet folded, eyes wide. They did not come for stories of war. They came for something older, something gentler, something true. She raised no voice. She only spoke. Strength is not given. It is remembered. A hand went up. A question about shame, about loss, about how to breathe when the world calls you weak. She nodded. Approval is wind. Strength is stone. The wind forgets you. The stone stays. The lioness mark shimmered on her shoulder, soft and low, like the moon had kissed it. No one laughed. No one questioned. They began to chant, not loud, but steady, not like a performance, like a promise. Words passed down from old mouths, reborn in new ones. The tree seemed to hum. Even the insects stilled. They did not call her teacher. They called her balance. Fire without smoke, river without flood. And she listened as much as she taught. She looked at their faces and saw a future her pain had prepared. She smiled, not out of victory, but peace. Her heart, once broken like clay, now beat like a drum carved from truth. She did not need to rise. She had already risen, and in the silence that followed, a single leaf fell, not from age, but from release.